I've owned 82 cars in my life, and here are 6 that I just can't stop thinking about. These cars are listed out in chronological order. This isn't the order I'm thinking about the most to least or anything like that. This is just how long ago I owned it. We're going to start at the beginning. Let me introduce you to Squirt. This is a 1995 Honda Civic DX that I bought for $150 with a friend of mine so that we could learn how to do engine swaps and manual swaps on cars. Why was it $150? Because the guy had no key and no title, and the interior was moldy and the car wouldn't run. So after a lot of investment of blood, sweat, tears, and a little bit of money, we were able to do a complete manual swap out of a car from a junkyard, gut the interior completely except for the driver and passenger seat, and proceed to take it up Highway 9, one of the twisty roads here in the Bay Area, on dry rotted 195 tires that squealed anytime you went over 20 miles an hour. I have never had so much fun going so slow. The origin story of the name, you're probably wondering why we called it Squirt. This car came with a little air freshener hanging from the rearview mirror. And that air freshener was the kid sea turtle from the movie Finding Nemo, whose name was Squirt. That's where it got its name. This is Chili, a Seat Cupra 280 that I owned while I was in London back in COVID times. And I bought this car in February of 2020 because I was starting to drive a lot more. Just before COVID happened, I had just quit my job and I was starting to commute to auto repair shops all over London in a cool car. And I wanted something fast, I wanted something more modern, and this thing was just the right car for me to get another Euro experience. When you're living in another country, don't buy cars that you can get back in your home country. So I made sure that every car I owned while I was abroad was a unique spec that you cannot get in the US. The Cupra 280 is essentially a 6-speed manual Golf R. Seat is a brand owned by Volkswagen that was originally Spanish, and the Seat Cupra 280 is a heavily boosted manual front-wheel drive, just little pocket rocket thing that is spicy by nature, and this car is bright red and looked like a chili, and so my wife called it Chili. And I drove it about 10,000 miles over the year of 2020, just doing road trips with my wife and commuting to all the different repair shops that I was consulting for back at that time. Now, why do I miss this car? Because it was the quintessential European small engine, giant turbo fun machine. It was a hot hatchback that was a lot hotter than Squirt. Please, this is exactly what I needed to switch it up in this hot hatch lineage that I'm starting off with here. But that car was simply a giant turbocharger strapped to a tiny engine. And you had torque steer for days. The transmission could barely keep up with the car, and that's why most people actually preferred to get this in a double clutch automatic DSG transmission. But I wanted a manual. I was daily driving it in traffic, but it had adaptive cruise control back from 2014. But it was really just about you floor it, this huge turbo whistle comes on, it had a catback exhaust, it was tuned, it was super fast, you had torque steer for days, and it was just a fun, comfortable, modern car. You ever wanted to feel like a rancher? Go get yourself an old diesel truck. Back in 2021, I was moving back from London to the US and I bought a 1999 Ford F-250 Super Duty Power Stroke extended cab, short bed, Lariat with 200,000 miles from a Ukrainian trucker in a rural city just outside of Sacramento. This guy spoke no English. He was an extremely sketchy seller on Facebook Marketplace. And so I got a screaming deal, like $7,000 off of what one of these was worth back in peak COVID diesel truck shortage times. This was my first truck. It was my first non-catted diesel, meaning it was basically straight piped from the turbo back. And it, as a result, was one of the coolest things I've ever owned. I picked a 7.3 Power Stroke. I don't know why I turned into a Ford guy off of this. The first time I started this truck, I had the door open and you turn the key and you wait for the glow plug light to go off and you hit the switch. And this thing just rattles. The whole truck shakes and rocks when you start it up. And it's this rough, rowdy sounding engine that I will never forget that noise. And then you smell the diesel fumes. At the end of the day, it was an old Ford truck. And I took this thing all over the place. I put 10,000 miles on it in about a year of ownership. And I took it out to Kansas is where I ended up selling it. And in doing so, I got to drive through the Texas Panhandle where nothing exists. And if you ever wanted to feel like a rancher, you take an old diesel truck with that rattly sound out into the Texas Panhandle and you park it in a field, and all of a sudden you feel like you're a complete farmer that's ready to wake up at 2 in the morning and milk the cows. That's basically how I felt driving that thing. And I think about getting an old diesel truck all the time. Like all the time I think about it because of my experience owning that 7.3. You ever felt like you just wanted to shut the door on the world and have everything go quiet? Well, you can. It's called a W126 Mercedes-Benz S-Class from the 80s. I've owned two 420 SELs, 1988 and 1989. They made these things, I think, from 85 to 91. And that generation, the W126 Mercedes S-Class, is the thing that I would describe being most built like a tank of any vehicle I have ever owned. And the reason I bought the second one is because I couldn't stop thinking about the first one. Problem was the second one was so rough that I dumped a ton of money into it and ended up trading it for a car that I then sold for $900 more than I had bought the W126 for in the first place. So I took a huge loss on the second one, but the first one is the one that I will think about forever because there's a specific memory that taught me what Mercedes-Benz is all about. It was a heavy rainstorm. I had gotten home from a very long day out at the racetrack. Stress, heat, hard work, my body getting beat up, coming home in the rain. It's tough driving a trailer setup in the rain and heavy traffic. And I get home and my wife wants me to meet her at the in-laws' house for dinner. And so I decide I'm going to take my Mercedes to dinner. And so I go inside. I don't even have time to change, but I run back out. It's pouring down rain. And I hop in the Mercedes and I close the door. And all the heavy rain and all the stress and all of the angst that I had been through that day just melted away. The rain got super quiet. The seat was extremely comfortable. It smelled nice. And I turned the thing on and I got this smooth V8 and I hit the gas and I have no power whatsoever, but I can move up to speed at a reasonable pace, and the suspension is making sure I don't feel anything going on the road. I can't hear anything. The wiper blades make a cool angle across the windshield. And this car and that experience with this car has me obsessed with Mercedes and getting that kind of experience again. I've owned a lot of Mercedes since then. That was the first one I've owned. I've owned 6 or 7 Mercedes at this point, and I have never been able to replicate that feeling because the more modern ones that have better parts availability and that I want some of the features and the performance that come with more modern AMG cars and Mercedes of a newer era, they just don't have that same tank-like feeling. But I always think about it, and I hope someday that I can replicate that experience. One day, I decided to be a baller father. What do I mean by that? Right after my son was born, I went out and bought a 2012 Land Rover LR4. My family already had an SUV. We had a 2017 Explorer. But I wanted to be a baller father and get a luxury SUV that I could take my son around in. And I owned it for like 2 months. And my son rode in it once, when he was very young and very upset about something that day. And so my only memory with him in the car is not very good. But my own personal memories that I made with this LR4, driving it about 1,000 miles over a month and then losing 9 grand when I resold it, don't get me started on that, built some incredible brand loyalty and fantasies that I will always think about for what a Land Rover or a Range Rover could mean to somebody. An LR4 was something that I felt had a cool look to it. It was blocky, it was tall, and inside was extremely well appointed back in 2012. You had Bluetooth audio, heated steering wheel, heated and cooled seats, and I just felt this is super nice. And I got one that was used that had 112,000 miles, and you get in and the interior's brand new. Everything held up really well. The paint's in immaculate condition. I had the dealer who I bought it from do a couple little tweaks to the exterior to make it look super nice. And it was just a very luxurious experience. It had a ton of power from the 5-liter V8 that's known to eat timing chain tensioners and coolant hoses and valve cover gaskets and intake manifold gaskets and plenty of other things that, you know, make Land Rovers unreliable, I guess. But most of these things have a ton of miles on it, and I'm a shop owner, so I figured I'd be okay. I didn't have to touch that thing in my 1,000 miles of ownership, if that makes you feel any better. But I still think about having that luxury SUV experience because I don't have one with the Explorer, but that's what I've driven now 20,000 miles since my son was born and we got that thing. It's a super practical vehicle, and the LR4 was too, but we just didn't need both. It was better off having money in my pocket to do other things with at the time, but I still think about what if I had kept it. I once bought a stolen truck. It wasn't actually stolen, it was never reported stolen at least, but I bought a 2002 Dodge Ram 1500 from a guy who had an application for duplicate title signed by somebody who I never met. He gave me this truck that had a tag on it on the license plate from 2023. Turns out when I ran the Carfax, it had last been registered in 2017 to a CarMax. Somebody had traded this thing in and then it just vanished off the CarMax lot or something like that. And this truck basically had no history. It was a ghost for 7 years or 6 years until I bought it. And I bought it from a guy who had multiple 4.7 Magnum Dodge 1500s from that generation, and he had 2 that weren't running sitting in front of his house, and he had a 3rd that was his daily. And he basically loved these things, but he had no clue how to maintain them. So he'd buy them, drive them until they broke, and then he'd buy another one. And that's not an approach that I personally recommend you take with your cars. But that's what he did. And so I offered $1,500 for both trucks. I bought 2 non-running Dodge Ram Magnum 4.7 1500s on the same day. One of them got crashed off of my trailer. The other one made it safe and sound. And only one of them had this sketchy story with its prior ownership. And so what happened, I got them fixed and I sold both trucks. But on the day that I sold the 2002, I got a call about an hour after I sold it from the guy I sold it to. And he told me that he went to AAA to get it registered. And they told him that it had $1,800 in back fees on it because it hadn't been registered in several years. In this situation, I told him that it hadn't been registered in 2 years and that he probably would owe something like $500 in back fees. And at that point, I basically offered to buy the truck back because I didn't want to give him another $1,300 so that he could register it. So I gave him the money back, he gave me the truck back, and then I basically had to sell it for parts because I didn't know the history of it, and so I put it up on Marketplace and just said, this will never be registerable again, you have no access to a title, and your only means of ever being able to do anything with this truck is going to be on a farm, exported or something like that. But it's a great running truck. I had got it running just like that. On New Year's Eve 2023, I had known of this issue with the title, and I had somebody driving 5 hours from Northern California down to me to buy the truck. And I had a couple hours left with it. So I decided that because it was a holiday and there was nobody else in the parking lot here in my Fremont location, that I would take the truck and use it for a practical purpose. And that practical purpose was an abandoned vehicle that existed in the parking lot of our Fremont location here with Driven Auto Care. And I decided to use the truck to abduct this abandoned van from our parking lot and dump it in a homeless encampment.
Well, kind of stuck, I guess.
You could say that that may not have been the most socially responsible thing ever, but what I will say is that by doing so, I essentially donated it to the homeless encampment. It was already abandoned, and it was gone less than 24 hours later. So I'll always think about this bad boy truck that was loud, that was rowdy, that was probably illegal. I kind of want that experience back, so I think about it regularly. So those are the 6 vehicles that I think about regularly in my life, trying to recreate these experiences somehow. What do you think about? You got to leave a comment. Let me know. What are the things that you've experienced in the past with your car ownership that you really want to experience again someday? Are there any? What is the memory that comes to mind? Let me know below. If you liked the video, leave a like. Helps us show up higher in the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. That's all I got for today. Stay driven.